I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.
Hello and welcome to a new year here at the Unidentified Celebrity Review. I had a great and happy holiday season. I hope you all did as well. 2022 is gearing up to be a big year. The NDAA with the Gillibrand Amendment is now law. The Galileo project is ramping up. And the James Webb Space Telescope is on its way to the second Lagrange point. Any one of these programs could revolutionize the UFO topic in the coming year. And of course, there's always the hope for leaks out of left field. What an exciting time to be alive. Personally, I'm most excited for what James Webb will find. We won't get anything back until summer, and even then we'll just get some generic pictures showing off the capabilities. It's going to take some time for those programs, the first year science programs, to process the observations they'll make. But those observations, regardless of the outcome, will transform our understanding of the universe. If you're curious about what James Webb will look at in its first year, look up the Space Telescope Science Institute. This is the organization responsible for deciding what James Webb will cast its gaze on. I've pored over all the approved programs in the first year, and while each one will give us answers that will transform our understanding of the universe, there are a couple there that are particularly interesting to me. I'm putting together a video with my highlights. Be sure to subscribe on my channel, Rather Be Squidding, to catch that. But now, let's get on with the show. We have an amazing guest today, and I can't wait to hear everyone's 2022 outlook. So please join me in welcoming the rest of our hosts today. Luis Jimenez and UFO Jane.
Hey.
Hey guys, what's shaking?
Missed you guys.
Yeah.
Happy New Year.
2 weeks. Happy New Year. Happy 22. I haven't talked to you guys.
For
in 2
real.
weeks. How you doing? How was the New Year?
If you'd asked me last week, I would have probably said something else. But I feel great. I feel great today.
You look rested, Jane. I'm glad you finally kicked the sickness that you had.
Yes, I got the you know what. Yes.
Starts with a C, ends with a D.
Yeah. I don't know. Be a bummer, but yeah, I kicked it. I kicked it to the curb. So I'm starting out 2021 with immunity. Some good immunity is how I see it. So
awesome. I love it. Rather, how was your New Year, bud?
It was great. Nice and relaxing. Did some side projects. Did a little squidding.
Did you do a little squidding?
Yeah. Caught some squid.
Get out of here!
Literally.
I'll take some pictures for you next time, Lou.
Yes, please. Take some pictures and share it with the good folks of on Twitter and the internet, because I'm sure people are curious what that looks like when you catch it. I mean, I know what it looks like. I'm sure it's pretty straightforward, but I am curious to see how big they get. So you had some calamari this year, or last year.
Yeah, last year. Good stuff. How was your New Year's, Lou?
It was great. I hung around here for the most part. We went down to San Diego, and then yesterday or this weekend we went up to what is it called? Oh my gosh, Solvang in California, which is a recreation of the Netherlands. It's got the most populated concentration of people from the Netherlands in one town. And so I was thinking about Max Moscovich a lot while I was there. So
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's got, the windmills and the chocolatiers and the sausage beer gardens, and it was cool.
I want to
Cool.
go
We
there.
actually, the coolest part is we went stargazing at night because it's away from LA. So and got to take some pictures with this new camera, and I was shocked at how well it picked up the stars with the little lens that I'm using right now to film this show. I was blown away. I was like, wow, I took this picture. This is cool. It was weird. No, never done
Did you
it before.
see? Did you
Very
see
cool.
anything stargazing?
Yeah,
anything weird?
No, not weird. No. We just saw.
Oh, just boring stars.
Yeah, just the all
universe.
that is the entire galaxy. It's wild when you take pictures of the star systems. Just how clumped they are together. Really, like, it's been a while since I've seen the stars. So it's living in New York City, Miami, and now LA. It's rare when you get out and actually see them. So it was fun. All right. Hello. Good morning, good evening, good day, good afternoon, and aloha. Welcome back to another episode, New Year's Day, sort of New Year's Day version of the show. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to the Unidentified Celebrity Review, your home for credible news, reviews, commentary on everything UAP UFO. My name's Luis Jimenez. That is Rather Be Squidding Jane Kyle down below, aka UFO Jane. Before we get started, of course, consider joining our Patreon. Check out the super chats. They're a great way to financially support the show. Everything on this show is given away for free. There's no paywalls. So if you could support the show, awesome. That's highly appreciated. Links are down below if you want to help us do that. Also want to say thank you to the moderators in the chat. You guys have been awesome over the last 2 weeks. We've been doing the UCR Top 10. So we counted down the top 10 episodes of the year, which was a lot of fun. And we had pretty much all of our moderators there with Aaron and in the crew. So it was a lot of fun. And so thank you to the moderators. Also want to remind you guys that this show's available on iTunes, Spotify, and all of that right after the show. I upload it pretty quickly after the show. So check it out. Please leave us a rating and review. It goes a very long way. The podcast it's insane how much it's growing. And then, that's it, you guys. So without further ado, I guess let's bring on our guests for the day. So this gentleman who we're bringing on has a special place in my heart because he's one of the first UFO podcasts that I ever started listening to, along with Alejandro Rojas's podcast. And he just had his 10-year anniversary show. And I think it was late November. Martin, give me a thumbs up. Was it late November? Yeah, he's giving me the thumbs up backstage. And it was amazing. Just all of these people that came on to his show to say thank you and what kind of researcher and person he is to bring attention to this. Because Martin does a whole bunch of other things, including an art appraiser and antique appraiser outside of the UAP thing. He does a podcast on antiques. He just started a new podcast. We're going to ask him about that. That has everything to do with everything but UFOs. So I'm sure it's nice to get a break after 10 years of doing this show. He does it every week, Tuesdays, from 3 to 4, I believe, Pacific Standard Time, if I'm not mistaken. We'll ask him when he comes on KGRA, 5 to 7 Eastern State. Nope, 5 to 7. You know what?
I think I know someone who knows it for sure.
Let's just bring him on, shall we? Mr. Martin Willis. How are you, sir? Let's do it. You know what? Rather, can you bring him on? Because my computer's running a little slow.
Hey there. How you doing? So it's 3 to 5 your time.
3 to 5 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah.
On KGRADB.com. So,
right.
Martin, welcome, man. I also forgot to mention and tell the people that Martin was our first ever guest on this show as an interview. So
that's right.
That's where I learned how to do my interview chops through Martin Willis. I figured let's start the new year with Martin. I haven't talked to him and basically since the first Big Phone Home. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you're able to make it. And then also wanted to tell the people that that because of Martin Willis, I mean, he really put his neck out for this show when he recommended us to be on KGRA, and we ended up getting the Friday time slot because Martin recommended our show. I was like, wait, what are you doing? Like, why would you do that? It's just absolutely insane. It was a great honor that he even considered the show. So just wanted to personally say thank you for that.
You're very welcome. Well, you're doing such a great job. You've come a long way. And people are writing in chat that, did your mustache get abducted or something?
It did. Yeah, I shaved today. I figured, you know what? New year, new face.
Yeah.
Are people freaking out? I don't know. I haven't looked at the
chat.
chat.
They're saying, hey, you look younger or something. It's a younger brother. Yeah, someone said that.
How long until someone's going to deep fake a mustache right back on you? Though, right?
Yeah, that's the real question. So the one thing I wanted to tell actually my co-hosts about, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but you can now in StreamYard, you can highlight and star a comment, which puts it in an archive. So if we've been getting some complaints that people hate when we stop the show to say thank you to super chatters. And I'm like, look, they're giving us money. Like, I'm going to acknowledge it. You know, they're putting their hard-earned cash into the show. But what we can start doing now is archiving the comments, because StreamYard does not erase them anymore. So we could save the comments, all of, especially the super chats, for the last 15, 20 minutes of the show. And we could go through them. So that way the conversation doesn't break up. But if the super chat does fit with what we're talking about, we'll go ahead and we'll ask it right then and there. So we're going to give it a shot. Do you guys see that on the chats here, how you can put a little star on these?
Yeah,
and
cool.
then it gives you another section here where you can go to starred, and then it just saves them in there. So it's really cool little feature. I just noticed that while we were doing the replays for the year, which, by the way, John Ramirez was number one, or was he? No, he wasn't. It was actually Peter Robbins and Avi Lowe, which was an amazing conversation.
Yeah,
but I was thinking of John Ramirez because we just booked him for the 17th, Monday, for his return interview. So I guess we'll kind of start there, Martin, because your interview also took off after having a discussion with him. So the thing I love about Martin Willis is he's very grounded. He doesn't have a lot of time for, I'll just say, bullshit. And I've heard really awkward but still great moments on the show when you've even hung up on people who you thought were just completely full of it. And so
only one guest.
Yeah. But
you have to hang up on callers every once in a while. You know, I mean,
or not callers. I meant guests. Yeah.
Oh,
callers,
just one
callers
guest
are a whole nother animal. Yeah. I mean, we have a guy who calls us as Lou Elizondo's neck. So I can understand callers hanging up on callers.
Yeah.
But I guess because this is something that it's something that I'm starting to learn now, having been by the way, January 17th is our 1 year anniversary. I think.
Whoa.
Did I just
Wow.
or 2 year anniversary? Excuse me.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah.
So 2 year anniversary, and but this will be the first year that I've been doing interviews for a whole year. So the first year I didn't do any interviews on the show. Then the second year, Martin came on just before the second year started, and then that's how the interviews started kicking off. But anyway, I digress. I guess the thing that we've been sort of struggling with is, how do you, as someone who's been doing this for 10 years, when you get in those moments where you're like, this is just bull. This is bull. And I it's upsetting me. What do you do in those moments? Like, how do you ask the questions you want to ask without the person getting insulted by it, even though the question might be legitimate?
Well, first of all, I think you probably get this too. It's kind of a feeling you get in your gut, you know, like a pang, and you say, please don't go there, or stop going there. And you kind of have that in your mind, you know, and then you try to formulate a question that'll steer them away from that, maybe, or call them on it. And a lot of times I'll just plain call them, like, can you be more specific? Exactly what are you talking about? And what type of evidence do you have for this certain thing? You know, and you know, I remember I had someone on that she was talking about drones and the drone future, and she said that the United States government has already spent $1 trillion. She said this, $1 trillion on this technology. And I said, whoa. What do you mean $1 trillion? I mean, you have to give me facts. I said, are you going to give me facts on this? And she said, I will give you facts. I said, okay. So I said to the listener, everyone listening, I said, okay, I'm going to post this podcast tomorrow, and I'm going to have the factual links to this. And I gave her like 4 days, and I said, I need the facts, and I just deleted the podcast. You know what I mean? So when someone goes like way out there, like the one guy that I hung up on, the one guest I hung up on, when they go way out there, then you got to decide what are you going to do? Because these videos, these live streams or whatever, the podcasts, they're up for who knows how long until we have some digital Armageddon, it's
right,
floating around. So you don't want your name attached to, bizarre stuff if you can help it.
Yeah. I guess, so then did you have, I know we've been getting comments from both sides on our John Ramirez. You guys talk over him too much. You're rude. You don't let him answer questions. You don't let him finish his thoughts. It's like, whoa. I mean, he's saying some wild stuff. Like, why can't we stop and say, whoa, hold on a second. Can we ask you about that meeting at a hotel that you're, and not to say that you're lying. That's not what we're trying to do. We're curious. Okay, how do we get there? Can we not just blow past that? So, what did you think after having a pretty lengthy discussion with him? How did you find his story hit you?
Well, I thought, now listen, I did listen to your interview. You scooped him before I got him, but I had worked on him for quite a while, but you got him ahead of my show. I booked him as quickly as he could be on my show, but still, I wanted to listen to your show, and I did. And he said something that really stirred something up. And I want to say it had something to do with people are calling him a Satan worshiper. And, after they listened to your show. So I wanted to hear that. And it was kind of, I guess you could have taken it that way if you looked at it a certain way or something like that. But I didn't go. I was waiting to see if he'd go on to that topic. He didn't on my show. About the hotel, I think it's really bizarre. I did question him quite a bit about, they didn't have to get rid of their cell phones, so it was obviously unclassified. He saw the EDUs and some of the sign-ins, so we knew there were, people from college, professors perhaps, or something like that. So I questioned him on, I said, to me, I would think that if there was the CIA, whoever it was that was, I can't remember who he said it was, that was speaking on this topic, there would be a ton of questions by all these people. I mean, there must have been a lot of, what were some of the questions? And he goes, he said there were no questions. Everyone seemed to already know it that was there, which I think is kind of bizarre. I don't know.
Do you think it was one of sort of those timeshare sort of scenarios where at the end of the presentations, everybody's like, no, we got no questions. We just want to get the hell out of here. How did I end up here? Like, how did we get into this? I can see that sort of happening too.
Yeah, that actually happened to me before, so I know just what you mean.
So Martin, I'm curious though. So do you think, do you have red flags for that story, or does it almost seem more believable because it's so weird?
Well, a lot of times, I'm not an expert. I did take some courses on body language and stuff like that. But I'm absolutely no expert, but there was no BS meter chiming away when he went through that. I felt like he was sincere. I don't know. And he's very articulate, as you know, and very intelligent. So I think that his recollections, whatever they are, would be, I would dare to say, right on. So I don't know really what to think about that whole thing. If I'd look back on it now, I think it's a real bizarre story that this happened, especially that they would announce that we're hybrids and, with obviously no documentation or anything was put out there. It's kind of a, it's kind of a bizarre story. I really don't know what to make of it, to be honest with you. you know, but for me to like call him out as BS, I didn't do that. I just don't know. I felt like he was being sincere myself. So
I mean, I also felt like he was being sincere as well. It felt like, I mean, especially after Rather made him pull out his medal. It was, like it felt like there was no delay in his thought process. Again, I'm not a body language expert either, but I did feel like, well, whatever this guy is saying might not be accurate, but he believes it's accurate and that it's true.
Yeah,
so that's
exactly.
kind of the feeling I got, but it's difficult to substantiate some of his claims. And like you said, like how I do also know that he was very into this topic before the CIA.
That's right.
He was going to different conferences on his own dime. So he still has a very, very high, keen interest in this, but it's just tough to tell where his belief comes in and where the facts are.
Well, I'd say it's not really that hard, right? Because he's told us that none of his facts actually came from the CIA. It came from this
Wikipedia
ambiguous hotel meeting.
Yeah.
He would say, I can say that. I know it's not classified because I read it on Wikipedia. You know, he may have this brilliant retaining of information that he can just rattle off, but he certainly seemed very well, he seemed to have a ton of knowledge about what his specialty was supposed to be in the missile. I forget exactly what it was, but it was weapons of mass destruction or something like that in foreign countries, missiles or something. I don't know if
tracking system.
Yeah. But anyway, he seemed very, very well versed in that. But it's kind of it's a puzzle. But you have another crack at him coming up, so that'll be I'll be watching that.
Well, I'm curious to know if you had another crack to ask him some more questions. What would you follow up with?
Well, I usually think of something like, what did I get the most email about? And right off, I think that's what I would do. But I would have right now. I don't have that in front of me. So so what I would do probably, I'd probably rehash some of the things just to hear if it's exactly the same story. And I think it was also pretty interesting. I didn't go into his childhood stuff, so I'd probably go into that, the things that he had happen supposedly, and also the draw. According to him, the draw of people that have had an interest in UFOs, then they're drawn into the CIA. That was kind of bizarre twist. I don't know if I'd like to know more about that.
Yeah. Real quick, just want to give a shout out to Chris Lato. He's going to be going to sleep. Yeah, but he's just saying, hey, hope everyone had great holidays. Pumped for 2022. Thanks for being here, buddy. We truly appreciate it. I know he's going to catch the rest of the show tomorrow. But yeah, we got to get Chris Lato back on as well, because he's a lot of fun to talk to.
He's great.
Like really, really great guy. And I'm loving some of the theories that he's starting to put out there as well, which has been a lot of fun. Coming from, a guy who's smart. He's got a good head on his shoulders. I mean, he's flown fighter pilots. He's probably done some bombing missions somewhere. So that's just always fun to get their perspectives.
It's a great perspective. His perspective of, and it's always great to have people coming in from different angles and different thoughts, because no one knows what the heck is going on really. And it's really good to get someone's thoughts, because it might be closer to the truth than we know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious, what are some of the questions that you had for Ramirez when he comes back?
I mean, I'd really like to dive into the hotel meeting. Kind of one of the things on my mind, maybe Martin, you could answer this for me, is that you spoke earlier about bizarre and kind of dangerous beliefs that people might espouse. And I kind of feel that way when John brings up the hybrid theory, especially when he says that certain families are more enhanced than others. It seems like that's kind of a dangerous belief to espouse without any evidence. So, when we have someone like John on, I am somewhat a little bit concerned about, propagating those theories versus, how do you talk about something like that? That is, someone has a very strongly held belief, but you think it might be a dangerous belief that doesn't have any evidence behind it.
Yeah, well, I think actually think that if he's going to push that more, he really needs to back it up somehow. I mean, there has to be, if this thing is out there and it was not classified, there has to be access to that information if it's true. Somehow or another, unclassified material, it's got to be out there. You know, I have not done a deep search myself on the internet, but still, you would think that if it's true what he's saying, you know, maybe when he's on next time, on the 17th or whenever that is, that someone could ask him, if this is not classified, then anyone should be able to find it. And what do you say to that? I guess that would be a good question to ask him.
Well, I can't wait. John Greenwald's going to be on Miller's show tomorrow, and that's one of the questions I wanted to give to Miller is any of this stuff that John Ramirez is saying foilable? Can you FOIA this secret meeting or any of these other claims? Or really, primarily, the things that I find most interesting about him is when he starts talking about satellite systems and the capabilities of these satellite systems and what they're tracking and where those objects are going. To me, that all of that stuff was ringing very true. Then again, I don't know. It's just an opinion. And I've had also other people reach out that I know that have either former intelligence community guys or actual members of the intelligence community have approached me privately and have said, you know, hey, when he starts talking about satellite systems and capabilities, you should be really paying attention because some of those things he's talking about really shouldn't, like, they were surprised that he hasn't been reprimanded for some of those things yet.
Yes, I would think that anything to do with national security when it comes to satellites has to be completely highly classified. I can't understand. But I heard him say on your show, not on my show, but on your show, well, I know I can say that because it's on Wikipedia. I don't know if he went further than that. Did he?
It depends on which aspect on what he was talking about. When it came to the aspect of the capabilities of satellite system, he was talking about that from knowledge that he says is already publicly available because these systems are really old. They've been replaced 5 to 6 times over at this point.
Yes.
So, you know, it's almost like it's pretty much common knowledge. And then when he started talking about the Google connection to the maps and how Google basically was given all of that technology, or either that or maybe won a bid of some kind to get control over the Google Earth maps and all of these different sort of tools that were used for our federal government in the Cold War, probably. So yeah, I mean, I can't wait to talk to him again, but I am worried. Back to what Rathers was saying, and maybe I just don't think we had enough time to really dive into that idea of his, rather. So I think surface level, it seems dangerous. Like, I can understand what you're saying, like certain bloodlines, like that's like, it's like some far right, almost borderline fascist kind of stuff where,
I mean, there are white supremacist origins to a lot of these theories. Like, it's the truth.
And especially when it starts going into, certain types of beings with their really pale skin and their blue eyes and their long blonde hair. It all reminds me of, like World War II. Like, those things were kind of being said and how there is a dominant gene pool. But yeah, I think I don't believe that John Ramirez believes that. I think we got to dive a little deeper into sort of who he is, what his philosophies are on those things. And that's why we're bringing him back. And then we're also bringing on, you guys, just so you know, Jesse from Hacking Your Mind TikTok account that made that interview just go absolutely viral. We're going to have him on this Friday. and sort of dive into why he believes what John Ramirez is saying, especially from a DNA aspect, accurate. And then maybe we could dive more into where these origins of these ideas came from and why can they be not dangerous, I guess. Can we talk about it without it being a certain gene pool or race with the superiority over everybody else? You think that's possible?
I mean, no, really. I mean, I think that if there's evidence for it, then I mean that's the fact, right? But there's absolutely no evidence for it, and we've mapped the human genome, and like there's evidence against those theories. So
is an idea dangerous or not, or benign based on the evidence behind it? Right. So is the idea less dangerous if we find evidence for it? Right. So let's say John Ramirez really did have this meeting, and the only reason we know about it, right, is because he shared that with us. And maybe the ideas are dangerous or could be misinterpreted. I don't know that having evidence or not having evidence necessarily makes an idea dangerous or not dangerous, right?
So I agree with
you. We cannot be afraid to discuss different theories about what's going on. So I think if we go into, this idea is going to be so dangerous, we better make sure to blow over that or not mention that enough, because we don't want to get people too excited, or we don't want to kickstart some horrible, racist movement. I mean, there's zero intention.
Or even propagate a thought process like that.
So I think if we approach it like this is a dangerous idea, we can't talk about it, kind of makes it dangerous, right? I think if we try to break that wall, a little down. Yeah, it's hard though.
I agree with you that, if there is evidence for it, it's still a dangerous idea, but the current situation, as I see it, is that there's a lot of evidence against this idea, and there's absolutely no evidence for that idea. So why are we talking about it? And talking about it only perpetuates the assumption that there is something behind it that is truthful, a kernel of truth. And I just don't see any kernel of truth here.
What do you think, Martin, on that discussion?
I didn't hear that part of him. I didn't hear that part of it, so I was totally unaware of it.
Well, I'm sure you're probably familiar though with like the David Icke's and this theory of and that's kind of where his theories I think stem from a little bit. I don't know, because we didn't really dive into where he got these ideas from.
And I don't think John is a Nazi or has, horrible beliefs. I think that he's just kind of, hooked on to this bad idea.
Hybrid theory, though, I mean, that's a really generic, broad word, right? So to say if there's evidence for it or not, I mean, what does that mean, hybrid theory? How far are we going back? And I don't know that technically that we do understand all the, I mean, as I understand, there's still a lot to learn about the DNA and the origins of all of us. Yeah. So I think that's just a very vague general thing that, yes, I would agree there's no evidence because I don't know what it's really saying.
I think the only thing that kind of makes me think there could be a little something to that, it seems like we had taken quite a big jump somewhere along the line in our development, our evolution. And it just seems like when they say, the human beings as we know them, 200,000 to 300,000 years, something like that, it doesn't seem like that it could have jumped like it did. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it just seems like I know 200,000 or 300,000 years seems like a lot of time, but it's really, really not. It's a very, very, it's a couple of grains of sand as far as time goes in the, 4 billion years. So I don't know, there could be something to that. That is one of the theories you hear, that we're somehow seeded or we're being watched as an experiment. You hear all these types of things, but I don't know. I really don't know what to think about that whole thing. It's interesting. It's another.
So you're not a hybrid, Martin. So you're not
Not
coming here to let us know. Maybe be careful what you say.
And by the way, guys, we're saving your questions, R&R. I got your question. I got all your questions from R, and we're going to save it for the end of the show. So if you do have a question, it doesn't have to be in a super chat form. Just go ahead and type it, and if it's a good question, we'll start for you guys, and we'll make sure to ask it at the end of the show. Just a new way to do things around here, but I gotta tell everybody what we're doing, so that way you don't get offended if we don't answer it right away.
So may I say something too about
please
this
do.
conversation? That going back to the satellites. So I often wonder if there are satellite systems out there that can detect things coming in toward our orbit from out there, so to speak, and if UFOs are actually coming in from there. I'm not saying they are for sure because no one really knows that I know of, but maybe they do know that things are coming in. You would think like the UAP task force or something like that is taking looking into this topic, that would be one of the things that they would look into. Well, are these things being detected coming into our orbit? We have all this equipment out there, the equipment that we're not supposed to know about. And what can it detect? Or, are they coming in another way, or from another dimension or another time or whatever it is?
No, I guess it's the $4 trillion question, but I guess it's, what do you think about then, rather, or Martin or Jane, like, would you think of, because thinking about the human genome and how we're still mapping it and trying to figure it out, what about an idea of like panspermia, and would that sort of classify as being hybrids without it being a supreme race or supreme gene or any of this stuff, but that there was something that maybe did sort of, because it seems like on the evolutionary trail of things that the human brain quadrupled in size and in intelligence in a very short period of time compared to the rest of evolution as a whole. So
I think I disagree with that, though, because you look at all the other humanoid species that are now extinct, right? The Denovans, the Florentian humans, those little hobbit-looking guys. They were all smart, used tools, and had similar cognitive abilities as us. But us humans killed them all. So it's not like you can't really compare human intelligence to an ape intelligence and say, "Wow, look at such a big gap. There must be something special here." Because the answer is no. There was, this intelligence wasn't just unique to humans. It was a lot of different species that had this intelligence. And I think a lot of these theories kind of come from a place of hubris, thinking that we're so better and superior than the monkeys and the apes, when I don't really know if that's true.
Well, did you guys hear about that group of monkeys that took vengeance upon the town because one of their little babies, a dog, killed it, and so they took vengeance and were throwing dogs out of trees and off of roofs, and I think they killed over 250 dogs in this village. Yeah. So if that makes you think, are we seeing some kind of scary evolution happening right in front of our own eyes? But are the humans and our dogs, though, encouraging this evolution in the monkeys, right? So what could have been interacting with us, 2 million years ago, right? So let's go even farther back, right? So I think that's still a question of that initial spark of humanity, and whatever we call that, whatever we think is unique. I don't know. I think it's still a question. I think the farther we go back in the history, the muddier it gets, the blurrier it gets. We could be talking about multiple alien species that could have interacted with humans at different periods, right, throughout the evolution. So there could be different touch points. It may not be even just one, right?
Yeah, and Yeah, and an interesting point is that they did do some research into what they think the first humans developed tools, and it was them using rocks to smash nuts to get the food inside, and occasionally they'd miss and splinter off a sharp edge of a rock, and they'd use that as a knife. And we've seen monkeys do that same thing, use tools to smash nuts open. They just haven't yet splintered something off and realized that that's a tool that can go wage war with. So I think that you might be right.
Well,
Jay,
they have there was a
getting there.
discussion. No, I think they are. Well, there was a discussion about a group of apes that started developing and using their own tools to fish. and the researchers were saying, or one of the hypotheses were, are they entering the Stone Age? In their version of the Stone Age. And so maybe, go ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe they'd evolve quicker too if us humans weren't here to, control most of the earth. But, I do like your point, Lou, about panspermia and maybe inadvertent alien origins to life. What I really have a problem with is people thinking that aliens are going to have a vested interest in us humans. Like, I feel like that's kind of a hubristic statement, thinking that aliens coming to Earth would actually care about us and want to influence our evolution. Like, I feel like that's a little bit of a hubristic statement as well.
Panspermia is almost like that von Neumann probe idea a little bit. And I'm, there was another article. Sorry, rather, you could switch the cameras because your computer's working way better. But there was another article that came out over the weekend talking about how the human form is probably not as rare as we think. This idea of humans living in other galaxies and star systems, and how nature tends to repeat itself. Mm-hmm. Nature loves patterns. So, I mean, Martin, I guess, what are your thoughts on sort of not being special, or panspermia, or this idea of us being manipulated in ways? Or do you think what we see today is just a result of natural progression without any sort of involvement at all?
I thought it was rather funny that I think Steve Hawking was talking about how he thought that aliens and other planets would be so different than us. But I here I am saying I disagree with that. Yeah. But the bipedal, the bifocal, the all these things that we have, look at all the species it's developed separately on our planet, for one. Another thing, though, when you think about development on other planets, you have to think of all kinds of things. Like, if we didn't have a moon, we would be different. If we had more gravity, our bone density would be thicker. We would, everything. There's so many variables, and each variable can also change in the evolution of whatever being that is. So there's all types of things to consider, but I think on this planet, it certainly shows that. And I think it seems to work really well. And you're probably right. It's probably replicated in other places. I think of things like that all the time. I think of weird stuff too. Like, I wonder what someone's, if the other species enjoy music, what's the equivalent of the first car, the first kiss? Do they fall in love? Is love universal? I think of all these things when I think about if there's life out there. And maybe I just think too much. I don't know. But it's interesting to think about, for me anyway.
I feel like music that's such a great thing to ponder. Music. Do aliens listen to music? Have they discovered jazz or
that's where it came from?
Yeah. Or where,
right.
like it's because I think I'm trying to remember the quote from Carl Sagan when he talks about music is a language for another dimension. If I'm paraphrasing it correctly, music is a very special thing because it's how mathematical it is. And just the whole aspect of music, I feel like could be used as communication, to express feeling, to express intent or desire. I mean, one of the first things we put on a satellite was a record, that had music on it. And yeah, that's a wild thought. Jane, what do you think about that idea?
I love that idea. The thing is, music is so personal, so it's not like math per se, and 1 + 1 = 2. It's so subjective, right? So like music I listen to, it brings back nostalgic memories of growing up and being here on Earth. So
it's mathematical in the way that like nature
yes, true, yes, of course, yeah, for sure. But the experience of it, right. Is subjective. So, and I would think that our music here would be very much tied to our Earth experiences, and it would be intrinsically human and Earth-like, and probably sound very weird and not be likable to an alien race. And if it was, though, it just goes back to the question: is there some ultimate humanoid form? Is there some ultimate music masterpiece that we're all trying to get toward? Maybe we would all like similar music. That would be super fascinating to me if we did like all the same music. Because I'll just say in my own household we can't agree on what to play on Spotify. So I would love to skip through like the universe's Spotify and just see what everybody's listening to. That would be a trip.
Funny. That's funny.
Rather, do you think aliens have music?
Yeah, I do.
I can't imagine a world without music. It's very difficult. It'd almost be like a world without oxygen. But this idea that all of us, all living life forms, are made from carbon, oxygen, and what's nitrogen? Is nitrogen one of them?
Oh, shoot. Don't quiz me on this.
Yeah. And then there's a fourth one
that
I'm not thinking of right now.
Hydrogen.
Maybe.
But yeah, I mean, like, I think, man, I don't think it's as like Earth and this idea of all these ideas that we've had, all of these dreams that we had. I don't think they're unique. Wouldn't shock me if it is as normal and as repeatable as a 4-leaf clover in a forest, or a tree or a pile of rocks. Like when you look at a huge pile of rocks and you walk down it, you'll start to find patterns of the same rocks laying in the same way, the same shape throughout the whole pile. You'll find it repeating all the time. So it's a pretty fun and wild idea. Martin, we had a question for you here, and I thought this was a good one. Who's your favorite guest so far? And who is your dream guest?
Well, I'll start with the dream guest because it's kind of hilarious. I grew up in a different time. You are youngins, and I'm the older generation. So I grew up with Saturday Night Live had Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, yeah.
So Dan Aykroyd's really into UFOs, and I've been working on getting him as a guest for a very long time. So and I even had his next door neighbor working on it, but
man,
to get it. It's awful hard for me to say who my very favorite guest. I'm supposed to say Luis, right?
It was me in 2018, by the way, just so you know.
Okay, Jane, sorry. So
you can say Jane. She was probably way better.
I would. So, I've had guests that have just blown me away. I got to tell you, David Marler is one of my very favorite guests. Dean, who you're having on, he's such a delight. You're having him on Wednesday, I think it is. He's such a delight. And, there's so many. Like, I really loved having Chris Lito, who's in your chat room. I got over that interview went so fast. I'll tell you this, when my 2-hour show is over, like, wow, that went really fast. So that's a good guest.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I judge a really good show.
That's how we do it here as well. Every time we're like running out of questions at the end of the show, we're like, Jesus, it's the end of the show already. What happened? It's almost like experience a time machine without any hardware.
I used to love having. I think I had Stanton Friedman on something like 16 or 18 times.
Wow.
And he would say the same thing over and over, but I loved having him. He was just so much fun. And, you know, off air, he was just the nicest guy. And he was like, I went up to do his retirement show, actually, and went to his, in his town up in Edmonton, New Brunswick, and set up at a hotel. And he came in and I did his anniversary show live with him. And he just, afterwards, he was asking, all you appraise furniture, you appraise art. You know, he was asking me all these questions. He was just a wonderful, wonderful guy to interview. So he was a lot of fun. But I have to tell you, like, for a regular guest that I've had on several times, Dave Marler, I like people like him. I had a guest last week, Graham Rendell. He was very, very factual. I like factual people. Dave Marler is a factual person, and no BS, as you said earlier. And that's what I really like, people like that. And you know, I mean, and someone just said Stan Gordon. Stan Gordon's coming up in a little while. He's been on my show many times. Another great guest. And
can you remind me
very early?
Can you remind me who Stan Gordon is?
Stan Gordon's in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
He was the first real investigator on the Kecksburg crash back in the 60s, and he started very, very young. He was a kid when he was researching, and also Bigfoot and things like that. I mean, it's a real active area over where he is in Pennsylvania, with all kinds of weird things going on. So he's a great one for sure. But there are a lot of them. There are a lot of like people's favorites. Sometimes my favorite guests are ones that no one's ever heard of before. I had this woman. I have this thing now where I say, okay, if you had a UFO sighting, let me know. Maybe I'll make a 3-minute clip for my breaks on KGRA radio. So I've been doing that, and I had this woman contact me, and she had such a fantastic story. Go, whoa. You're coming on my show. She's never been on anyone else's show. Her name was Deb Coyle. She's never been on anyone else's show that I know of, I should say. It was the first time she talked about it. She was on my show, and it was a childhood sighting in South Africa, kind of like someone I saw mention the Ariel School. You know, it was earlier on. It was in the 70s when that happened to her, and it was such an amazing show. I love those type of things when it's fresh, when it's new, when it's not out on the circuit, so to speak, and there's some really fascinating aspects of the story. Another one I had, I encourage anyone to check out my YouTube channel, which is Martin Willis Live Shows on YouTube, and I did this. A guy named Albert Wayne, same thing. He contacted me, said I had a UFO sighting. So he's telling me this UFO sighting. I'm recording it. It's pre-recorded, and it just blew me away. And I said, "Oh, you know, I mean, this is just amazing." This guy, I'll just say it real quickly. He wasn't a show guest, but he was just someone that I talked to for 13 minutes, and it's up on my show, and it went up a few weeks ago. There's about 8,000 views on it right now, and he's very, very credible. Tells the story really well. He was 17 years old, heading down the 95 corridor from Massachusetts down to Long Island, and all of a sudden he saw what he said to his girlfriend, looks like a plane going to be crashing over there. Something's coming down. All of a sudden it stopped. And then he said all of a sudden it was like daylight. And then he's describing this thing. It's really bizarre. It has these prongs coming off of it with lights at the end. And so the weird thing was all these cars on 95 as well as him, they all pulled off to the side of the road. They were all over to the side of the road watching this thing happen. And all the trees were waving. There was no sound that he could hear of, but all the trees were waving back and forth like it was a hurricane, just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And he said all of a sudden, and like it was above them. They didn't even know they're above them. And he looks up and he says he really has a problem when people are telling these stories of telepathic things. But he said, he says, I feel like an idiot because all of a sudden I look up and there's these amber colored windows and there's these humanoids looking down at them. And he has this thing pop in his head. Don't be afraid. We're we're just observing. That popped in his head. And all of a sudden, flash, it's over again where it was before on the other side of the highway. And then he sees it shoot up and then just go off and vanish. And so he looks at his girlfriend and he says, let's get an ice cream. All the cars start up. They all drive. They all get off on the first exit. They all pull into Howard Johnson's and they all get out of the car like zombies and walk into the Howard Johnson's. And
did they all get ice cream?
To get ice. Well, I don't know if they all got ice cream.
If they all got ice cream, that would have been just weird.
The...
That sounds like a scene from a movie.
And it's crazy, but I love stories like that. Love them. And I've heard a lot of them. And those are fantastic. They're so fantastic. How could someone make something like that up? You know,
have you heard the telepathic thing before that? Because I don't get entity or abduction reports often, but when I do, that's a really commonplace thing of the idea of just getting a download or a thought. Is that something you've come across too a lot?
I hear that quite a bit. And what's I think is the most interesting part of that is that it seems like maybe 90% of the stories are take care of the planet. Take care of the earth. The earth is in trouble. Or they'll see there's some that have reported seeing like the earth in flames. Like this is a message, you know, get off your butts and do something type of thing.
What other commonalities other than that have you found doing this in 10 years? Like what are some of the other things where you're just like, oh, wow, that again, somebody mentions that.
Well, that's one of the big ones there, if you ask me. You know, well, I'll tell you about my own sighting was really boring, and I don't really want to take up a lot of time on it, but it was just a hot tub sighting, and this object went over me. But the number one thing I thought about the whole time that I was experiencing it was, wow, how is that thing moving, stopping and moving, and there's no sound at all? Absolutely no sound. So the sound aspect is something I hear over and over again. And I mentioned earlier that woman, Deb Coyle, that was on my show that had the South African sighting. She said it was like all the sound was sucked out of the air, like they were underwater, you know, when this thing was over them. And so I talked to Tom Reed, who was at the Berkshire's UFO incident. That was on Netflix. I'm sure a lot of people saw that. And, you know, basically saying the same thing. You know, there was absolutely no sound, like the sound was gone. And then I heard that from a guy in Florida on a military base. He said, not only did the object make no sound, but all the crickets, he said the insects in the near the Everglades are so loud that makes your ears hurt. And he said everything went silent. Everything went silent when this thing was over them. And the dogs cowered, you know, in their pens. So those type of things, the lack of sound in the woods, the normal jungle sounds or wood sounds or whatever they are, those are things to me I think are fascinating. I have heard it many times.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the two of those things kind of came up with mine. The first was the sound. There was no sound, none at all. And then the thing that sticks out to me about my sighting, you didn't mention it here, but was that the light that it was emitting wasn't lighting anything up.
Right.
So it was really low to the ground, and the ground beneath it wasn't lit as it should have been if there was a ton of lights, you know, shining in that direction. So that's for me, those are the things where I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, that rings true to me too. And I'm curious because I just had an interview with a gentleman from Wired magazine. He's going to be doing an article about the show.
Oh, good.
And it's really cool. But he kind of came at it for me as like, you know, this is all bullshit, right? Like all of this is BS. He really went into, you know, all of the connections, especially in the state of Nevada. Like Harry Reid is from Nevada. The reporter that's reporting all of this stuff is from Nevada. The S4 or Area 51 is in Nevada. This is where all the sightings happen. It just seems to be all coming from this one about Bigelow and the OSAP program and ATIP. All of that seem to be based out of there as well. And he he was very much not buying this idea. And I was like, well, okay, but what's the motivation behind that? Like, why because I always go back, and I guess my questions are always long-winded, and I apologize, but I always think of it from my perspective. Like, do you ever just think to yourself, oh my God, I've got this completely wrong. I got my memory wrong. It's possible that I've just maybe changed something in my memory, which does happen. The brain does do that. But then you get like these very credible people that come to you and they're like, yeah, are you thinking about this the right way? And does that give you, like, when I heard James Carrion on that Showtime show, I had just rocks in the pit of my stomach. I was like, this guy worked at MUFON. He seems to be very articulate. He's a smart guy. I mean, there's aspects of his story as well that he hasn't come up with or provided people the information with. But he did seem to lay out a really good explanation as to why this could all be BS and just a cover up for top secret tech. But it seems like another reason people are giving is that, oh, well, they're just trying to get a bigger budget. And for me, I don't think that reason carries a lot of water, because every year, no matter what's going on, the military budget goes up. No matter the president, no matter the party that's in control, the military budget always goes up, and they're going to get their funding with or without a UFO story. I mean, how much did this new UAP office add to the NDAA? Maybe at most $5 billion to the bottom line of the NDAA. And that's like being super positive about what this budget's going to be. But do you ever get that feeling in the pit of your stomach? And what's the thing that sort of makes you come back to, you know what I saw. I know there's something here, and I don't know what it is. I'm not going to give people any answers, but something to sort of reassure yourself with.
Yeah. I don't per se have any of those feelings that it's wrong. As far as memory goes, though, I totally get what you're saying. And yes, I've looked deeply into memory because it's very important with, what you and I are doing in these shows and things, when people recall things. Right. And each time you recall something, you're reconstructing it from what you have. And you can very easily stick in a false memory by something that someone could suggest, or you may remember something wrong, and all of a sudden it permanently becomes part of the recalled memory over and over again. So memory is totally infallible. But as far as me feeling like, no, I don't get the pit in my stomach. I know there's something here, and I know that I don't know what it is, but I also know that there's no way that it's a government technology for, maybe you can explain away some things in the last 20 or 30 years, but you can't go back further than that and say that we had a black, flying triangle in 1901 that was hovering over, and people, that's actually a case, of one that was cited. These things have been showing technology for, decades and decades and decades long. If we ever had that type of technology, it could never stay under wraps. Why wouldn't we use it for warring that we're so good at, killing each other? So why wouldn't we use it in some type of situation if we actually had that technology? Perhaps we have some type of technology now that we can't even fathom that it could be part of what people are seeing, but it certainly doesn't answer everything. And I still think that, for instance, the Tic Tac or whatever, I don't think there's any way possible that could be our technology. If you're talking about the G-forces that would wipe out any type of equipment that we have, I forget what the G-force was of that when that thing dropped down to the ocean, something like 1,500 Gs, something like that.
Yeah,
but we don't
went
even
from
have
80,000 feet to sea level.
We don't have any equipment that could handle that. We don't have any equipment that could handle that type of G-force and not fall apart. No type of circuitry could handle that. Never mind, some type of being inside. So, and here's another thing. We don't have anything that we know of that wouldn't break a sound barrier when it goes super fast, which that's another commonality. You mentioned commonalities. Another thing is these things taking off, at say 5,000 miles an hour or whatever it is they're doing, or several thousand miles an hour, and there's never any sound barrier broken. That big bang that we should hear when something breaks 714 miles an hour, or whatever it is, something like that. And they're going like Mark 5 and no sound breaking. And then in and out of water. A friend of mine, Mark D'Antonio, the astronomer, was on a submarine when something was going several hundred knots underwater. And this is, 25 years ago. We don't have that type of technology. There's no way.
He was in the submarine.
Yeah.
I forgot that part of the story.
Yeah.
I remember someone saying something about that, but I didn't realize Mark D'Antonio was in the submarine. So he was a member of the Navy.
No, he was a private, and he was a contractor, and he was on the test run on this submarine. So he was a guest basically, and he was at a place where he probably shouldn't have been at the time he was there. Right at the controls, so right at the radar or sonar. I mean, all that.
Rather, did you have any thoughts on that? I saw you smile.
Yeah, I'm curious to what you think, Martin, on if we have the full story of government disclosure since 2017. I agree with everything that you're saying, in that I think that there's something there, and we can't reproduce those things. In 1901, there's no black triangles that could have been government produced. But it still seems very strange what has happened since 2017. And it seems like we don't have the full story. And it seems to me maybe the government is using a real out there phenomenon as kind of a smokescreen for something else. Do you see any evidence for or against that?
Well, certainly wouldn't be the first time. They were using UFOs to their advantage. I'm trying to remember what it was. The flight, the test runs of some airplane. I can't.
Oh yeah, well, the stealth bomber too.
Yeah. So they were using that to their advantage. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a great smokescreen, sure, but I don't think it covers everything. I really don't. I think that they would, of course, use it to their advantage when they could, and then shy away from it when they have no answers. That's what I think. Because how are they going to explain to, say, our government, how they're going to explain to the American people, well, there's something flying around in the skies and we don't know what it is or how to protect you from it. They're not going to say that.
Do you think they know what it is?
Do I think they know what it is? I do think they do not know what it is. That's what I think. I mean,
I think they have a better idea.
I think they may have a little bit of a better idea because they have all the ways to have a better idea. But I still think that I really, really, truly think that they're most likely baffled. That's what I think.
I agree with that, only because I think part of me thinks that they want a resolution. They want to give people resolution on this because they don't want to hear about it anymore.
Right.
I think that's part of the reason why we're maybe getting, a brand new office with $1 billion budget plus. Again, we got to wait and see what that budget ends up being. But I truly believe that if this is real, there's a there, which I think there is, and they've collected as much data as humanly possible, which I think could be just an exorbitant amount of data. And after analyzing that data, come to the conclusion of we have no clue what this is. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know how it works. We don't know what its intentions are. Those are all very big questions that if they just admitted it, people would have those questions would be the first ones they would have to answer. And they just don't, they'd rather just be quiet on it than say, I don't know, because saying I don't know makes them look foolish a little bit. How what do you mean you don't know? Your budget is in the almost $1 trillion a year range. How could you possibly not know?
And another thing is, even if we may figure out someday that we can't even understand what it is, if we knew what it was, we still wouldn't even understand. Right. That's a possibility.
If it's interdimensional, that's kind of the case, right?
Yeah. I mean, some people think that the UFO, along with Bigfoot, along with ghosts, poltergeists, and all that, are from another dimension. And that's not a really bad theory.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just as good as all the others.
Yeah.
And I had what I thought I would never ever talk about it in my whole life, but I had like a poltergeist experience, and I know that it absolutely happened, and I finally told my son about it one time, and he said, "Look, I believe you," and he says, "And you know what? There is an answer," and he's right about that. There is an answer for what it was, but would we understand what that answer is? I don't know.
Have you ever shared that experience on your show?
I did at one time. Yes.
Okay.
If you would like, it's
yes.
It's
yes.
it's not earth shattering.
No, that's fine.
But it really happened, and so I'm in the antique business, auction business, and I'm an appraiser, as you mentioned. So I was doing an auction, like I don't know, maybe every month or something like that. And so I was cleaning out a house in a town called Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and it wasn't an old house. It was probably from the 1940s or 30s, something like that. It wasn't a real old house compared to the 200 some odd year old houses that are there. So I was upstairs, and it was a slow time of year. And I told the lawyer, I said, "Look, I'll take everything to the dump. I'll keep my guys busy, and we'll take everything to the dump, sweep it down, and get it ready for you to sell." So I'm upstairs, and this was during the winter in New England, and they had what's called storm windows, or like glass windows on the outside. So I'm up in the bedroom, and I go into the closet, and it's full of like clothes and hangers and stuff like that. But I'm opening the closet door, and they put in a carpet, and they never cut the bottom of the closet door. So I had to like jerk the door open to get it open. What a pain in the neck that would be if you lived there every time you had to go in the closet. So I'm throwing everything into this garbage bag, and I walk out to the stairway to put the garbage bag out, and the closet door goes bam. I mean, it slammed loud. And so I go back in, and I open the door again. I see it stuck on the carpet, and I look at all the windows. All the windows are down. There was no wind that day. And I said, I'm going to get the heck out of this house, but I wasn't quite done. So I swept like the hallway, and I threw the broom, slid the broom down the stairs. The front door was wide open. And so I'm walking around, and all of a sudden the front door goes bam. And again, no wind that day. I walk down the stairs, and there's the broom leaning up against the door. I slid the broom down the stairs before.
Wow.
So I run out.
Were you alone in the house?
I was alone in the house, and the guy that worked for me had gone to the dump. So he comes back. I'm standing outside, and I said, "I'm not going back in that house alone." I said, "We got a little bit left to do." I said, "But you have to go back in with me." So he was teasing me. He was going, "Ooh," So he worked at a funeral home, and we were all done. And I was in the garage, and there was one of those big wicker baskets that have a big loop. And he goes, "Oh, I see these things all the time with flowers at the funeral parlor." And so I said, yeah, whatever, So it was the very last thing. He had taken off, and it was like a couple things on the floor. And I go to pick up the basket, and it's stuck. So I'm pulling on it, and I pull so hard that it breaks in half. The bottom half stays on the ground. The top half I toss into the truck. And then I walked over, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my God, I bet there's nothing sticking on the floor. And I tapped it with my foot, and it just slid. There was nothing on the floor. The bottom of the basket was stuck onto the floor, and there was nothing holding it. So wow. That was it. But it really happened, so I have no idea what it was. I thought, well, is that what a ghost is? I had no idea. This happened about 30 years ago. And
wow.
But
way before your podcast days.
Oh yeah. And when it happened, I didn't even tell. I was married at the time. I didn't tell anybody, my wife or anyone. I was like, no one will ever believe this happened to me. And then after a while, I just thought, well, if it happened, and I want to know what the answer is. I still don't know, but I know it's way off the UFO topic. But still, it's something that happened to me firsthand, and I really have no idea what it was.
Wouldn't shock me if if all of these things end up being connected in some way.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
wouldn't
as
shock me at all.
almost like a glitch in
Yeah.
the Matrix. But
Yeah.
I guess let me ask you this, Martin, because I do respect your BS meter, and now we're sort of 5 years into this story, and all of the aspects of it have, not every single aspect, but a lot of it has been looked at, repeated, glossed over, combed through. So I'm curious to know, what are your thoughts on the TTSA, Lou Elizondo, Christopher Mellon aspect to this, I guess what would, it almost feels like AD and BC, a little bit, where it's like, post 2017 versus pre 2017.
Yeah.
And 2017 is like the beginning of a new age. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this, I guess what we'll call it, AD sort of aspect of this discussion.
Well, I was seeing that whole thing come together. Tom DeLonge, this was way ahead, was talking a lot about it. And then he was out there, saying that he had meetings with special people and all that. And a lot of people were just taking it with a grain of salt. And then there was that email hack. And they saw that, yes, indeed, Tom DeLonge was meeting with certain people. And so that became very
certain people. Let's just be clear. It was Hillary Clinton and John Podesta.
I'm not sure about Hillary Clinton. But anyway, maybe.
Well, she was CC'd on there.
Oh, okay.
There's literally an email where he says, "This is our secret plan."
Yeah,
I believe about it, or Podesta does about it, or somebody does. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, well, it's so anyway. So I was watching that all come together, and a lot of us that were interested in this topic at the time watched the live stream where Lou talked for the first time, and Chris Mellon. I happened to have Chris Mellon on a couple of years, about a year and a half before that. So I was really lucky to get an exclusive interview with Chris Mellon, and I got him actually on. I connected him to George Knapp and got him on Coast to Coast, things like that. So I was, it was a fascinating story. Chris's story is fascinating. And then, so that all came together, and we all watched every single thing that the New York Times put out there. And it's kind of a weird thing. It's like it didn't really resonate with, people we were talking about it, but it wasn't like, hey, wow, like this is really something, these videos and blah, 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 and all this stuff. So it was kind of weird. And then New York Times, December 16th or December 16th, 2017, whatever it was. All of a sudden that comes out and it's like, oh yeah. I'm reading. Oh yeah. This is all that I saw back in October. And all of a sudden, bang, I go to people, in the fine arts, appraisal business, people, I'm in someone's house and they're talking about it. It's like before I would never talk about, when I'm out there, I'd be too afraid that I'd be considered a nutcase and, it would hurt my career somehow talking about it. But anyway, so we saw that whole change. And I think it was I think it's been a very positive change in so many ways. Like there are scientists that are looking at this thing now. And, the whole thing I used to talk about on my shows, why isn't science interested in this most important topic? Well, I'd get answers back from the scientists that I would interview, and they say, well, you can't get grants for something that you can't have an end time where you can have results, and if they can't, say that they're going to have these results, or it's not something replicable or whatever it is, then they're not going to be able to get the funding, and that's not going to happen. And no one's interested in, and it's and you're considered crazy, and it's a killer, for a career killer, for these scientists to take on a topic like this. Then this article comes out, and all of a sudden the attitudes are changing. And I remember talking to the professor Kevin Knuth, Dr. Knuth, and him saying he was going to these conferences where everyone would look at this guy that was talking about these earthquake lights, and they would think, oh my God, this is a nutcase. Come to find out, he had this breakthrough because he stuck with it. And it's really a phenomenon that this guy this guy discovered, and he's saying, I'm not going to let this be the earthquake lights. I'm going to look at it now. I want to be on the bottom floor when this thing, and work this thing and try to get somewhere. So along with so many other scientists are really taking this thing serious, and I love it. And I all these people that have come forward, the guy that was on earlier, Chris Lato, he wouldn't be on. I don't know if you would have known enough about it. Jane, you've been around for a while, but I don't know if you people would have come forward and think that there's something to this if it wasn't for that article.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think the article and the whole New York Times story has given everybody permission to come out of the closet, so to speak. Even though we've only got like a leg out, it's still a lot more skin than we showed before. And I mean, I get, being from this, generation where when I was a kid, it was the Russians. When I was a teenager, it was Iraq. And then I became a young adult, it was Afghanistan and the Taliban. And every time there was a drum up to war, it was always because it's a threat. Terrorism is a threat. The Russians are a threat. This is a threat. That's a threat. That's why we got to put all of these young men and women in harm's way because of this threat. And so when the ATIP program was revealed and it had the word threat in it, myself included, it kind of made me go, whoa, why is it a threat? Why are we calling it a threat? And then the Space Force comes out and it's like, okay, what the hell? Like the coincidence of it just seems like these things are too close to each other. And it's almost as if, they're hiding the adding of this Space Force, which, by the way, we haven't even begun to see the budget increase because of the Space Force. It's just now starting to get into gear. But this idea that the UFOs, excuse me. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. That this, that this New York Times article and these, people with it, and then they look at Lou Elizondo and how he's a counterintelligence officer, and there's just not a lot of trust within our government. And it's because the government has lied to us over and over and over and over and over again. And there's a part of me, and I'm sure there's a part of a lot of folks out there, that I kind of just want to hold on before I put my whole belief system into this story. I still want to see more proof. I still want to see more evidence. I'm glad that the coming out of these people has progress this discussion to a point where we organize the political call to action to make sure that we got funding and that we got an office and that, we still want congressional hearings and we want our government. We're trying to hold our government responsible because we are taxpayers. That's our right to do so. But there is a little bit of naivety to it because this is just a huge machine that no one's going to change no matter what's going on. I mean, how do you feel about sort of that trepidation to it?
Well, I don't think that, you said something earlier, or someone said something earlier about this being a smokescreen. I think it was Mr. Squidding up there, but I do think that they have to answer now, because you're right. They have an office. They have a budget. They're going to have to answer to some type of research that they're doing. So it can't all be window dressing. I mean, I think that a lot of us who are really looking into this topic would know that we would detect that pretty easily if that's what it ends up being. So I'm not really sure. That was kind of a long-winded question. I'm not sure if I'm really answering.
No, that's okay. But my questions are long-winded. I think you answered it. I mean, it's just this idea that, there are people in our community that do not believe this story. They are very adamant that this is a psyop, that this is a bunch of lies, that this government report, it was BS, that this new office isn't going to produce anything because of, and they point to Project Blue Book, they point to Project Grudge. And I'm in the mind of, well, during Project Blue Book and Project Grudge, there wasn't the internet. There was only 4 or 5 channels on television. There wasn't ways to communicate and connect with the people who think like you as easily and quickly as there is today. And there wasn't, again, we're speculating on the budget, but let's just say it's $1 billion. There was no budget this big ever connected to the study or the topic of UAPs. So I agree with you. Like I would find it very difficult to believe that these few men pulled the strings to get a office or a budget for even a contractor without. And if that's what it turns out to be, just a contracting ploy to get more money for a private contractor, man, people are going to go to jail. People are going to go to jail. Yeah. And I don't know if Lou Elizondo, actually, I think it's safe to say, I don't think Lou Elizondo would put himself in a position to go to prison to get money for a contract. I could be wrong on that, but no. But I mean, I don't know. Rather, you're foaming at the mouth. Well, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the most exciting parts about this modern disclosure is that we don't have to rely on the government. We have the James Webb Space Telescope. We have the Galileo project. We have UAPX coming out with the documentaries. So I guess that's a question to you, Martin. Do you think we're going to get answers in the next couple of years? And if so, where do you think the most likely source of answers might be?
Well, let's start out with I think the James Webb is a very good example of something that may possibly move the needle. We may be able to detect, intelligent life through an atmosphere. I'm not really sure exactly if that's something that can do or not, but I know it's 100 times more powerful than the Hubble. And, we may be able to, I'm really excited about that. I saw that when I went to Goddard and saw that several years ago being worked on, and it was really it was impressive how they were working on it all in these hazmat suits and a sterile environment and all that. It was really fascinating. But I really have a lot of hope for that. The Galileo project, as you mentioned, that's another real positive thing. And you really make a really good point that there's a lot of things outside that are going to be outside of the government that are it's going to have to keep them in check. Because, for instance, like, let's just say the Galileo project or the Hubble, or whatever, actually comes up with something that could be considered evidence of intelligent life out there. Wouldn't that be remarkable? And, how would the government ever stymie any of that information? So I think it's possible I don't know exactly when. I remember saying, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago that I thought within a year or two that we're going to discover that there was actually life at one time on Mars, and I really missed that mark. So I don't want to put any end date or when I think anything's going to happen, but I think that we are certainly heading in a direction of possible knowledge, that we're not alone. I think we're heading in that direction, but I hope I'm around to see it. I think that would be, the real evidence. I
think you will be, Martin. Personally, I think next year is going to be very interesting. But Jane, you had something to say?
Oh, not really. I mean, I'm really into everything you're saying. I am curious. You looking forward to future disclosures, James Webb Telescope, and all of that. To kind of what Rather was saying earlier, what about Roswell? Or do you even care anymore? Do you even need to find out the truth? Do you think that we're just going to kind of keep we'll keep ignoring that? Or do you think that we will find out more about Roswell?
I don't know about, one of the things when a skeptic will say, well, Roswell never happened. It was the mogul balloon or whatever it was. There has been so many times that the government lied. I think Stan Friedman used to say something like 6 times the government lied about Roswell, and which is, it's probably more than that actually. But anyway, my question to that is, why on earth would they put in the newspaper an approved article that says the Army Air Force has captured a flying disc? There's no reason they had to say anything at all. There was nothing pushing them to the point where they would say that, oh, all these people here saw something, so we have to write this. There was no pressure for them to do that, but they did. So that's always been the real curious thing for me when it comes to that. Recently, someone sent me a link to someone that was being interviewed as a child that was supposedly out there in the desert. Anyone can see it on YouTube, and I can't, obviously I can't pull it up right now, but it was someone who claims that he saw the bodies, and one of them was trying to communicate. It was horrified. It was alive. It's an incredible interview, about 45 minutes long. And Stan Friedman does interview this guy back in 1991, I think it is. So if you can search that, it's part of the American Archives. So it's a video that you can find on YouTube, and it's a fascinating interview, and it sounds pretty credible. This guy was had a lie detector test just done before on the topic, and I don't know, he seems very convincing. I don't know if it's true or not, but it's quite a story about the beings and them trying to communicate with them.
We reviewed a show, Jane, you were in it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, where it was Roswell, and they went back through all of the tapes, the tapes that Don Schmidt got, I'm sure, had a heavy part in that, but they went through all the tapes and they added an artificial intelligence truth monitor to it. And a lot of the folks, including Jesse Marcel, according to this artificial intelligence, were all being honest. A lot of the one thing I did notice, though, when they were going through the witnesses, a lot of the witnesses weren't actually there. They were people who had stories passed down to them. They were secondhand accounts, but their secondhand accounts, for the most part, were all honest. And I believe they interviewed that young boy who is now obviously an adult.
I think so. Yeah.
And I think he had only gotten parts of his story were a little fuzzy, but for the most part, I think he was being honest in his account of what was going on. But yeah, I mean, what do you think of this idea of amnesty for members of the government and people who have been keeping this under wraps? Because there's this idea that, well, if the government comes out and starts spilling the beans on all of this stuff, and it turns out, yes, Roswell was a cover-up. It turns out, yes, that all of these things did happen, alien abductions, yada, 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 that the people who suffered and were ridiculed and were lost jobs or fired, or even in some cases killed themselves, that they wouldn't be, the families of those people would be able to turn around and sue the federal government. So do you think there should be an amnesty clause to prevent something like that? Or how do you think that should be handled?
Well, that's really tough, and it would be opening a can of worms, I would think. I wouldn't know how that could be. It seems like there'd be so many gray areas in a situation like that. If someone was clearly fired because they said they were abducted, that may be one thing. But if someone, I don't know, if someone killed themselves over something like that, I mean, how? Yeah,
like a Paul Benowitz, who was sort of manipulated into a point where he lost his mind and his family had to institutionalize him, and I'm sure that was like, I can see how that family could have a legitimate argument and want to sue the Air Force Office of Special Intelligence, and bring some closure to that.
Well, they don't want anything to do with anything. A friend of mine has talked to the son several times over the years, and they don't want to let anyone have any of their papers that he had or anything. It's just kind of like a dark time in their life, and they just want to put everything behind them on that. Before I forget, I just wanted to give this out there. So for anyone to watch, it's the National Archives. It's an interview of Gerald Anderson, July 24th, 1991.
If you got the link there, Martin, you could share it in our private chat here, and we could put it on.
I will do that.
The public chat, so people can go check that out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I will do that. Yep.
Well, okay. Well, Brother, did you have a follow up to that, Phil?
Fascinating conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Well. All right, let's get into some questions from the audience, because we've got some great questions. We have some super chats that I'd love to go over with you guys. Let me go ahead and put this link in the chat here for you guys, so you guys can go check that video out as soon as we're done here. But let me, I guess one question that I will ask you before, oh, you already put it up there, rather. Thank you. One question I will ask you before we get into the audience questions is, and it's kind of what Jane was saying. If we get disclosure through or through all of these entities, the Galileo, the UAPX, the federal government, Pentagon, however it comes, and maybe it comes in all ways, are you going to be the kind of person who's like, well, what about Roswell? What about these past things? Or will you just be so interested in what's happening right there in front of you that I guess all of that really doesn't matter anymore because we just got confirmation? If we get that kind of confirmation, how do you think you would react?
I think I would let sleeping dogs lie. I mean, I don't think, I think I would be just really grateful and move forward, because if you start like pointing back, well, what about all this and that, I mean, we already would have the evidence in hand, so we wouldn't need to dig up the old ones and just assume that it really did happen, I guess, or for a lot of them that we've been told over the years mean nothing. Maybe they're Phoenix lights, or, I saw there was a question earlier, the Ariel school, which I think is one of the most fantastic cases, 1994, South Africa, with the school children. There it is right there.
Yep.
And the question, I am friends with Randy Nickerson, the creator of that film, and Randy has not communicated with me. I even wrote him recently and said, I know you have an NDA, you can't say anything. I just want to know how you are. And he hasn't even responded to me. So I'm not sure we're friends. I'm not sure what's going on. So, but hopefully I did get a little bit of an insight on that particular topic. When will that be released? And it's going to be on a major platform. Everyone knows the platform. I'm not supposed to say the platform. And it's supposed to be now. It was supposed to be before the end of the year. Now it's supposed to be sometime in the first part of 2022.
So first quarter here.
Don't hold your breath.
Yeah, that's kind of. Well, what do you think of that case as a whole? I mean, I know James Fox lightly covered it in his documentary.
I think it's the number one case.
Really?
If someone asked me what I thought the number one case of all interactions, encounters, I would say that one right there.
Yeah.
Followed by the Tic Tac case. I think that's spectacular. Rendlesham Forest, I think, is way up there. There's the Phoenix Lights is up there in the top 10. And these are things that I think are amazing. The reason I like the Ariel school is because there's been over like 120 school sightings. I interviewed someone recently out in Oakland, California. Children are impressionable, and it seems like these things are happening over and over again. And when you hear this case in particular and how it's affected all these children, I think that documentary certainly will be one to watch for anyone to watch that may have questions on this about this topic. I think they're going to be convinced there's really something to it after they watch that. Dr. John Mack. It's funny, I recently did some work in a house where the guy was really close friends with him and, was really upset when he died. He died, it wasn't mysterious or anything. He was just very tired. He was in England and forgot to look at the left side of the road when he was crossing the street and got run over by a truck, unfortunately. So it was nothing mysterious there. But here he is, a child psychiatrist, Harvard professor, and taking this whole thing seriously. He goes down a few weeks after the incident and interviews these children fresh off. And if you can find those tapes, for some reason they're completely wiped off of YouTube. They used to be on there. A lot of them will be in the film, the Ariel School film. But the way these children are answering will just give you goosebumps. And I've talked to them, four of them, I guess, since recently in the last several years. Selma Siddick, I'm in touch with her quite a bit. And, she was 4 feet away from one of these beings. And she described it similar to the guy, that interview with Gerald Anderson of Roswell, the skin being similar, porcelain-like. And big black eyes, which a lot of people will say they see. Another commonality there. But she mentions that she wanted to check on her siblings that were at that school, and she was 4 feet away from this thing. It was looking at her. She was looking at it. She didn't get any telepathy from it, but she said it was one of the hardest things that she ever had to do was to break away from that stare. She needed to break away to go check on her kids, and she said it was one of the hardest things I ever had to do in my life was to turn away. I mean, that's bizarre. And then I'm trying to think who it was I interviewed from Madagascar. That was one of the kids there, and his account of this thing, like skipping along, like he couldn't even really describe it, like it was going in and out, in and out, in and out as it was moving toward the swimming pool. It's such a great story. I mean, would all these kids that had never even heard the word UFO, had never even had a TV, could they all make this up in one day? I don't think so. I think that's one of the greatest or most interesting stories of them all, right there.
Yeah, I love that story. I thought, man, I thought James Fox should have made that a second film. You could have done a whole film just on that, and so I'm hoping this other director has sort of the film.
It's
chops like James Fox.
Oh! Let me just tell you something about Randy Nickerson. He is a perfectionist. Okay. That's why it took him 12 years to do this, whatever it was, ridiculous. Yeah. If you go on Randall Nickerson's wildlife photography, everything you can see about every single thing he does, he is a perfectionist. The thing is going to be beautiful. I can tell you that. And I haven't even seen a clip or anything. I've only seen the trailer.
I always get worried about documentaries in the UFO discussion because they're very more missed than they are hits.
Yeah, I think this one's. Yeah, I agree, but I think this one's going to make a big impression. I really do.
Yeah.
But I also was the guy that was thinking we'd find life on Mars too.
Yeah. I think we still might find life, or we might say there used to be life on Mars. What I mean. Right? Yeah, I think we're still getting there. I think that.
Yeah. That's all I meant.
Give it a few years.
I should make that really clear because I could sound like a nutcase. I'm not saying that there's little Martians running around. I'm saying that they're going to find evidence of past life. That's all I ever meant.
I'm there with you. I've been wondering when they're going to say that, or just because I think they already know it, is my feeling. Ness is very certain that there used to be life on Mars, and there have been so many articles about there being water on Mars, and it's like the same thing, and then they'll post the same article like 2 years later, and then there's water on Mars, there's water on Mars,
or it's underneath, it's underneath like an ice shelf or something.
And every journalist acts like it's never been reported on before and never shares any context. It's always this brand new idea. Yeah, I'm with you, Martin. Let's see, maybe 2022, maybe summer 2022, timed with the James Webb Telescope. A discovery with that. That would be a nice, combination of disclosures.
Well, this is a little. Go ahead, Martin. Sorry,
Lou. I sent you a graphic the other day. Did you get it?
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
You got to put that up for everybody. That's pretty funny.
Let me see if
I can pull it right off of your chat from you and I.
But, I got it right
graphic.
here. Well, it's like a little comic strip.
Meme?
It's like a little meme almost. I'll pull it up right now. But what I was going to ask while I'm pulling this up is, man, are we going to see Martin Willis again on this? Or not Martin Willis, Alejandro Rojas. Are we going to see Alejandro come do a show again?
Well,
I miss
talked to him the other day, and I said, Alejandro, we always do, the year in review. Lee Spiegel, he and I always do this year in review, and I said, let's do it on your show. I don't want to steal it from you. Let's do it on your show. And he said, I'll give it some thought. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
Oh, yeah, I'm popping it up right now. Hold on.
Yeah.
So breaking news. Oh wait, hold on. Let me see if I can zoom into this.
Yeah.
There we go. Breaking news. First images from James Webb Telescope. NASA. It worked better than we thought. and we catch them showering, which I mean, hell.
Yeah, it's pretty funny.
I don't know if it would be this accurate, but I think if we find a biosignature,
that's in the classified briefing.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right. Yeah, that would be in the classified briefing. But I mean, if we find biosignatures or forms of pollution or light grids or something like that, which I think the James Webb Telescope will have the capability to do.
Snowballing
might
on
not
my
be that far from the truth. What are you gonna say, rather?
Snowballing on my alien poop theory. I think that what James Webb Space Telescope is going to find is alien farts out there on exoplanets. That's kind of what they're looking at.
Or burps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Methane, right? You're saying essentially.
Sign of
Everybody poops.
Well, I hope we see Alejandro because I miss his voice.
Yeah. Getting back to Alejandro.
Yeah.
He has. I went and visited him when I was out in California a while ago. I had a rip through the state, and I stopped and saw him. And he brought me into his office, and he's got all these monitors up, 3 monitors going, and he's doing mortgages like nationwide for some big company, and he's working these horrendous hours. He's doing really well. He seems really happy, and so I think we will see him again. I just don't know when, but people like him. He's a very balanced person. That's why he and I get along really well when we're talking about this topic, things like that. But I don't think he can stay away from it. I think he'll be back.
I hope so because I miss his just level-headedness to this. Yes. I mean, he's one of the best out there when it comes to reporting on this stuff.
Yeah. And
I used to watch him before I do my show, just to make sure that what I'm talking about is factually correct. And so, I miss that from him, but I know he's busy. And I know also part of this is just, he's burnt. This community can have a really psychological effect on you. And it's what's hilarious to me is it's really just a handful of people that are super, super loud, and it makes it seem like a whole community, but really it's just a minority of people just yelling at the top of their lungs to a point where it pushes people just away. And I can and I've seen it happen. I can understand from a scientist's point of view when they come into this discussion and 4 minutes into it, they're getting yelled at, and being told, well, you've never read this, you've never done this. Da, 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 da. It's like, you invited me here, let's calm down. But if you guys have any questions for Martin Willis, don't hesitate, throw them in there. But there was, let's see here. Zeke had mentioned, going back to our John Ramirez conversation, he didn't say that specific aliens were dominant / more intelligent, just that the CIA were observing them. Definitely ask him. What do you got?
He definitely said families. Some families, human families were more enhanced.
He did say human families were more enhanced. He did say that. He did say that.
I didn't hear him say that. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty wild. But again, we didn't really dig into it. I want to dig into it some more and really sort of get into the philosophy of what he means when he says that. Because again, I don't think anybody here thinks that he's a Nazi or anything like that, but I am curious to know how he got to that conclusion. Unknown Martian says John Ramirez was talking about the IAA and something else being pushed. Can you guys discuss what those will change and why we should pay attention? When John Ramirez comes back, you guys, we're going to have the last hour of the show is going to be an AMA where you guys can ask John Ramirez whatever you want. And we talked about this question here a little bit before pre-show. I don't know if rather Jane had popped in when we were discussing this, but recently there was a video that was put out. Rick Roberts asked, thank you guys, by the way, for these super chat questions. What do you think of the S4 finding? Does this vindicate Bob Lazar? And just to give you a little history of what's happening, some guys from Third Phase of Moon, totally credible. Of course, I say that facetiously. Had come out with a video that claims that somebody found at area S4 on Google Maps, and on Google Maps it's labeled area S4 research facility, and
High
Jane,
Ridge facility or
yeah,
something.
high ridge facility, S4 high ridge facility. And there's a video. They go to the Google Maps thing. I haven't actually gone to Google Maps to try to find this yet, but Jane had brought up a really good point. That you can just add businesses to locations on Google Maps.
So I have some Google SEO background, so I actually do know a little bit about that. You can technically claim, a location on Google and name it, so there could be user generated. I will say I did go and I did copy the guy in the video, and I did find this location on Google Maps / Google Earth. I could found no label of S4. It was just blank. So I can confirm there is a location that is not officially a Google Map location. There's no name, and it's only revealed when you look at satellite imagery or Google Earth. That's a great way to find stuff on the normal map view that you won't see bases, you won't see any of those features. So it's really fun to do that. So it's real fun. And there are there is a road that leads to it that goes back out to the main road. So in theory, it could be connected to Area 51. It's right by Papoose Lake, but this is just a guy who was looking on Google Maps. And what I am fascinated by, though, is why he saw a label and I'm not. Was the label there, and then somebody at Google went and disappeared it, or did somebody hoax that and put that in there? But that's what I was able to discover so far. So
you're probably right about the second part of that.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's that part, but there is a location. There is an obscure, questionable location for sure. So this would be to the west of Papoose Lakes, not in the mountains. So you guys can go dig around yourself and find the little spot.
Did you get a chance to take a look at that video?
I did not, but Jane makes a great point. My guess is probably someone put that credited thing on S4 and maybe Google removed it.
Yeah.
I'd say that even if it was true, it doesn't vindicate Bob Lazar, in my opinion.
I think there will be, even in my opinion, I get a lot of hate mail for this, but I think there'll never be vindication for Bob Lazar. I think he's a fraud, and I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm going to actually do a show that's going to call out some things. I have some files. I have all kinds of things. But that's my opinion. I've talked to Jeremy Corbell about certain things. There's so many reasons I'm saying this. If someone wants to yell at me, my email address is martin@podcastufo.com. And feel
but just so
to,
you know, you can't yell through an email either.
Well, it's all caps.
Yeah. I mean,
lots of exclamation points.
Exactly. Sonic Gravity with a $10 donation. I totally believe you about the silence and transmedium velocity, instantaneous velocity, and non-inertial maneuverability. Check out Bradley Voorhees' website at sonicgravity.com and tell him what you guys think about the future human hypothesis, which is, I think, something he likes to throw around. Preston Paget, who we're going to be having on the show later this month, compartmentalization of the NatSec threat for adversarial low tech and drone swarms. The stigma of reporting had to be diminished to aid this. Any thoughts on what Preston says there as far as drone swarms?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, I mean, well, do you know Preston, right?
I do not. No.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
Preston. No offense.
I thought. Who am I confusing this Preston with? I'm confusing it with somebody.
Hey, Preston.
Not Preston Dennett.
Preston Dennett. That's who I'm confusing him with. Yeah, that's who I'm confused. But Preston Dennett's going to be on the show later as well, is what I meant. Not Preston Paget. Sorry, Preston. I got you confused. But I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I knew I'd
get
these things in chat when I talked about Lazar.
I think this makes sense. They're saying that perhaps the military angle is that they want to reduce stigma on UFO reporting because now there's legitimate things out there in the air that they want pilots to report.
This is what I want to ask everyone out there that thinks that Bob Lazar, and don't make any excuses. If Bob Lazar lied about going to MIT, then do you believe the rest of his story? That's the question I want to ask. Because first of all, he lied about it. I know someone that's in records over there. He was never, ever there, and they can't disappear records. And then the comeback will be, oh, yes, they can. The government can do anything. But here's the other thing. he's asked at a public forum, okay, what is the square right outside of MIT? If anyone went there for lunch, they would know that question, not if they attended MIT. And he said, I can't remember. You can't remember Kendall Square is outside of MIT. And anyone that went there, like I said, for lunch knows that. It's right there. So he never went to MIT. So he lied about MIT. Does that mean that the rest of his story is fake? I can't say for sure, but as an appraiser, if I find a fake document in a bunch of authentic documents, I have to question every document. And that's how I look at it. Why would he BS about that and not everything else?
Well, you know what I really wanted to see somebody interview Bob Lazar's ex-wife. He had 3 of them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I'd love to see an interview with his ex-wife, because his current wife is like, oh yeah, he's a super honest guy. That's what people I think would be most surprised about. Why would people be most surprised about that? That's a pretty wild thing to say.
Jeremy Corbell is interviewing his mother. He doesn't ask him things like, well, how do you feel about your son going to MIT? I'll take MIT again.
Right.
How do you feel about your son going to MIT? I said, Jeremy, you're interviewing her. Why didn't you ask her that question? He goes, I couldn't ask her anything personal.
I will say about that MIT, I think on Bob Lazar's Joe Rogan interview, he claimed that he told Joe Rogan secretly, and Joe Rogan can't tell anyone else, that he was involved in some secret, horrible project at MIT, and it was top secret and he can't tell anyone about. Now, I don't believe that, but devil's advocate.
Well, but I have there's no reason I have but a gut, is that I've always felt from the beginning that there were things about his past and who he was as a person that he was never going to be honest about. And I don't know where that hunch comes from. Like, there's no evidence. I guess it's just the type of person that's going to come out and say, hey, I worked at Area 51 is going to be a certain type of person. So I guess it's just, I know I've heard, I don't think he likes to be called a whistleblower, but if you want to call him a whistleblower, what type of person is a whistleblower that feels that rebellious to come out and, say what they did? What other things were they involved with? I think that's a question, but I think you're absolutely right, Martin, is how can we trust anything he's saying, right? If he's not being fully honest. And we have the same, there are many Bob Lazar fans who would have similar criticisms, right, of the government, right? Well, you lied about this one thing. How can we trust what you say about other things? I think it's completely fair. I would say I just have this gut feeling that that basic story of him working at Area 51 is correct. And a lot of the debunkings I have seen, I've debunked myself when I come across them. So that's just been, my experience is I see a lot of attempt of character assassination, which is fair, I guess. But yeah, and I don't, it's just a gut, it's a gut instinct.
That's all right. I mean, the one thing I was going to say is that the when he did say that on Joe Rogan's podcast, it was during Christopher Mellon's interview, and Christopher Mellon's rebuttal was, yeah, well, I will tell you some things off the air as well that totally go against all of those claims that Bob Lazar just made to you. And I tend to believe Christopher Mellon, and I'm dying to hear what Christopher Mellon said to Joe Rogan off air. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. But real quick, let's get through these last couple questions and super chats. Dry Toast and Sparky Lady, thank you guys so much. This is a fantastic conversation. She says, thank you guys. We've got Sevens 3363 with a $5 donation. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Let's see here. If you can answer this one real quickly, Martin, just so we get this straight, good things don't hide and bad things don't operate in the open. So do you think they're evil, these entities?
There's some people that think that, but I don't have that feeling, but I wouldn't know, it would just be an opinion. And so that opinion, I don't think so. Okay. I don't know.
All right, fair.
One other thing, real quickly, can I say this?
Yeah, please.
Bob Lazar, why would he be doing photo processing after he reverse engineered UFOs? Tell me that. Why would he be a photo processor?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look,
that's just another thing.
I'm
Or
the thing that
brothel. We're working on an IT in a brothel. You know,
that's where when I read the affidavit from a Las Vegas court that explains his role in the brothel and how he bought the apartments. He connected the apartments that the brothel was running out of. He set up the security system. He collected the money and he hired the girls.
He sounds like a weird smart guy. He sounds like a weird guy.
That's a highly
he sounds like a
intelligent
weird
pimp.
guy who's very intelligent, who like
Very
knows how
intelligent.
to make money,
Mhm.
who it kind of adds up. It also that matches to the whole story of, you know, I didn't really figure anything out. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't figuring anything out. I wasn't doing my job, and they kind of stopped communicating with me.
Well,
No,
I know it's like beating a dead horse. It's just in circles. You know?
the way I deal with Bob Lazar, Martin, and I think it's a really good way to sort of present it to people. Would you put the Bob Lazar story on the desk of a senator and try to convince them to write a law to look at UFOs off of that story? For me, the answer is hell no. Wouldn't even begin to start pitching the Bob Lazar story to a senator or a congressman. But Swaleo R with a $20 donation. Thank you so much. I think this is gonna be the last question for Martin. Actually, I got one more, and then we'll get out of here. Does Martin think there will be a connection between the phenomenon and NDEs, near-death experiences, which Leslie Kane has written about, and she's been on your show a few times? How has it impacted his religious sensibility? Do you have a religious sensibility, Martin Willis?
Not really. I grew up with one, I should say.
Okay.
So, but I never really, I think that this thing it shouldn't impact religion if we're all beings in the universe. I mean, in my own opinion, as far as the NDEs, I've never heard of any connection between UFOs and that. Anything's possible. I got to say, I don't know. And what was a lot? You said you had one more.
Yeah, I had one more question because we are going to have Preston Dennett on, and you have spoken to him, and I met him through your 10-year anniversary, and I've listened to him speak a couple times. What do you think about his story?
Preston is a great guy, and a lot of people love him. He writes on a lot of topics. I just don't know how deep of the research he's able to do. He works full time, and he does his books part time. So it's really. But he's a really super guy, real nice guy. Really like Preston.
Cool. Well, Martin Willis, this was an absolute pleasure, as I thought it would be, and I just had to say, oh God, it's 6 o'clock. The show's over. How did we get here? So I truly appreciate you coming aboard, getting weird with us here. Before you get out of here, please, if you could tell the folks out there where they can find Martin Willis. Sorry, my screen's freezing here a little bit every time I try to put on music. This is what happens. But yeah, here we go.
Well, I'm live streaming on YouTube on Martin Willis live shows. Tomorrow night I have Paul Hynek.
Computer.
Shall I talk?
Oh no! Yeah, keep going.
Paul Hynek, J. Allen Hynek's son, Project Blue Book. He'll be on the show tomorrow night. Every Tuesday night at 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, -4 GMT. That's when my shows are. And I do the Everything Else show, which is on every other topic. I had someone I spoke to about Inside Russia recently on the show, and it's going to be about all different types of topics that maybe I have selfish interests in. So that's it.
Nice.
Awesome. Oh yeah, I wasn't sure of how much you guys heard of me after I lost connection here. But yeah, if there's anywhere, if you haven't told everybody where they can find your show, and I know you just basically gave us a rundown of what your new show is going to be about, right?
Yeah, a little bit. Also, my website's podcastufo.com. I do have a Facebook presence and a Twitter presence. I'm not much on social media. So that's really it. And this has been a lot of fun. You guys are great.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you for being an inspiration. Thank you for letting us stand on your shoulders. Thanks for being the cool guy who said yes for my first interview ever, because I was totally geeking out and so excited when I got Martin Willis on the show.
We all need the first one.
We all need the first one. And because of that, that also is, I pay that, just so you know, I take that philosophy and pay it forward as much as I can with all of the newer shows that are coming up as well. Anytime anybody asks me to do anything, if I've got the time, I will be there.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great way to sort of, like I said, pay it forward. So I appreciate your inspiration. I appreciate your patience, and like you guys, he's got a 10-year archive of some fantastic shows and interviews that I always find myself going back to and referencing. And just, yeah, thank you, Martin. Thank you so much for just your tenacity and 10 years, man. Whew. I just can't imagine what this show will be like in 10 years. Rather, do you grow facial hair?
Yeah. We'll see how. I'll stop shaving today.
Yeah, exactly.
I might be able to in 10 years. So.
I love it.
Hope that's a good look for you. Or not.
All right, guys. Just so you know, Martin Willis's link is down below. So if you want to go subscribe to his channel, please do so. He's an absolute mentor and just a wonderful person, and deserves your follow and ear. So Martin, thank you so much for being here, my friend. I truly appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Thank you. Take care.
Yep. Ciao. All right, you guys, there we go. First show of the year in the books. We did it.
Good one at that.
It was a great
really
one.
Good one. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. How do you think this, starred? We were able to put these other questions to the side. That's a pretty good system, right?
I think so.
Great.
Is that better than stopping in the middle of the show and being like, "Hey, so-and-so said this"? What do you guys think?
I think it worked. I don't know if the people in the chat, what they think.
Let us know what you guys think. What do you prefer? Should we ask the questions as they come up, or should we save them for the end of the show like we did today? I mean, this is the first time we've ever did that, so I'm sure it'll get smoother as we practice it some more and sort of get into the flow of what should be saved versus what. I know I saved some things in there that probably shouldn't have been saved, but I just wanted to give some people some shout outs, because I know there's 300 people in this conversation today. If you haven't subscribed, liked, or shared this show, please do so. It's a great way to make sure that we keep growing. We've got a Patreon link for as little as $1 a month or up to $500,000 a month if you got the guts. You can go check out the Patreon. Every dollar, we're a public access channel. Every dollar that comes to us goes into making this show 4 days a week. So I truly appreciate it. Want to say just quickly also a huge thank you because we didn't get to do a show at the end of the year. So I wanted to say thank you to Rather, and thank you to Jane, and thank you to Michael, my whole team here, Alex, everybody that has helped make this show possible over the last year. And I really didn't realize how special this was until Kurt Jaimungal from Theories of Everything told us on Michael's show how impressed he is that we do this 3-4 days a week. We get together and we talk about this on a schedule, like how difficult and how special that really is. So I can't thank both of you guys enough for being part of this crazy discussion and show. And man, I can't wait to see what 2022 brings. But just thank you guys.
Great to be a part of it. And thank you, Lou, for
now say something nice together. Back to me, Jane.
I'm so glad to be a part of PCR, and it's just so fun to start off the year with these conversations and knowing there's more to look forward to. And we
got to also set aside some time. I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe we can discuss this off show after show today, but I'm also thinking of setting up, we got to review all the stories we missed here in the last 2 weeks of December. There's a lot of stuff that went down. But the next week is packed with guests. We've got a lot of guests already lined up for the month of January. So again, ring the bell, subscribe, share if you haven't already. Thank you to the moderators out there for helping us keep the chat nice and clean. Want to say thank you to our guest, Martin Willis, for coming and hanging out with us. Want to say all of the links to Jane, Rather, myself, the Patreon, the merch, everything is down below. Our guest, also his link is down below. So please go and support all of the folks on this show because they make it go round. Let's see what else. Anything else, you guys, before we get out of here? Rather, you working on anything this week for your show?
I'm going to put out a video of James Webb space program and the programs that I'm most anticipating. I think it's going to be a hell of a year, 2022.
Jane, are we going to see this interview with Jason McClellan?
My New Year's resolution is to finally post the Jason McClellan interview that I did last year.
Oh my God.
I have a best of countdown, or best of kind of highlights coming probably tomorrow, and then we'll have Weird UFO show next week. returning finally. So more YouTube videos in 2022 for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Zofa. Now I Become Death, Buck Wild, Night Gazer, Sparky Lady, all of you guys in the chat, Block Chick, everyone. Sorry if I don't say everybody's name, but we really appreciate you guys. And we'll see you tomorrow for Daniel Miller Show. Stay safe out there. Peace.
Bye.
I'm going to tell y'all right now, all of these wonderful people would not be here without Patreon supporters like you. If you enjoy credible news, reviews, and commentary on UFOs and UAPs 5 days a week, you want to support this show. What's your name? Marty. Marty, look how easy this is, Marty. Pick up your phone. Boom! You're a Patreon member. I mean, look, it's so easy. You just click the link, which is right here. Just for $1 a month, you can support this show. Just fill out the information and pledge what's comfortable for you. It could be $1, $5, $10, or who knows. Just support.